I have always said that the best advocates and the best people to push for policy change are those who have made the ultimate sacrifice to serve our nation. Welcome, everyone, to the Stories of Service podcast, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of the Stories of Service podcast. We are now in, I think, episode 188. And Jason Loughran, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Teresa. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be the 188th guest here today.
Well, I am just so happy that you have joined the show. And before we get started and we read about all the great things that you've accomplished, we're going to do an introduction by my father, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter. Hear from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And in this episode, we are going to discuss the critical nature that veterans play within the political arena. And if you don't think that politics for you, we hope that you will change your mind after this episode. Jason Loughran is a United States Navy veteran and a dedicated advocate for veteran rights. As the Senior Advisor of Intergovernmental Affairs at the New York City Department of Veterans Services, Jason plays a pivotal role in shaping policies and legislation that support veterans and their families. Previously, as Assistant Commissioner of Community Services, he led initiatives expanding access to housing, mental health care, employment, entrepreneurship, and education for veterans. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he launched Mission VetCheck, a groundbreaking program that connected over 30,000 veteran households with wellness calls and critical resources, earning national recognition from the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. Beyond his work in city government, he's a national leader in veterans advocacy. As the chairman of America's First Veterans and co-founder of the Veterans Caucus within the New York Young Republicans Club, he champions veteran representation in politics and policy making. He also spearheaded the Voices of Valor campaign, mobilizing hundreds of veterans and their families to engage in the democratic process. His military service includes a deployment to Afghanistan in 2010 as part of Operation Enduring Freedom, where he earned a Presidential Unit Citation for their heroic efforts. His impact has been widely recognized, earning him accolades such as the 2019 Baruch College Leadership and Public Service Award, the 2021 Irish Echo Community Champion Award, and City and State's 2023 New York City 40 Under 40 list. Today, we will be talking about his journey from military service to veterans advocacy, the challenge veterans face today, and your mission to ensure those who served receive the support they deserve. Welcome again, Jason.
Thanks, Teresa. That all sounds really good the way you say it.
Well, it's super impressive. I mean, I just can't wait to get into it. So the first question I always ask all of my veterans or active duty service members, reservists, whatever, Guard, is what inspired you to join the military and where were you born and raised?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was born and raised in Queens, New York. I joined the military because I was an only child of a single mother. Her and I grew up in an apartment building in New York. And to say that my mother did everything that she could to give me a childhood that felt like I had everything and more is an understatement. I have a really soft spot in my heart for single parents out there all across the world, because I do understand that single parent households and federal poverty are statistically aligned across all ethnicities and demographics and everything. So statistically, it's very difficult for them. And, you don't need a mathematician to tell you that in today's world. So that's much of the reason why I joined the military. The military was the only institution that was telling me as a young man that they would give me a job and also pay for my college. So it really felt like a no-brainer. It was in 2008 as well. So there was a bit of a recession going on. Mm-hmm. And there were massive layoffs across companies across the U.S. So it just seemed like the logical decision to move forward. And I wish I could say that it was because of my love for the country and the patriotism I have. But unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, that was not the case. But when I joined the military, that's when meeting.
That's when you found it.
Yeah. that's when I found it, and it's changed my life for the better. But I always tell people that joining the military is the best way to reshuffle your cards, because we're all born with a set of cards, and some folks have a winning hand, and some folks don't. So there are very few opportunities that you'll have in life to reshuffle, see if you can get a new hand or new card in your hand. And the military is definitely one of the best opportunities that Americans have to get a new set of cards and create a new pathway for their future. And it certainly did that, for me, in terms of growth in economic classes, going from maybe arguably a low-income household to now maybe middle income. I don't know. In New York, you never really know. So
yes, the cost of living there is quite high, but wow, that's so impressive. I'm even more impressed by the people who tell me that they didn't join out of a sense of patriotism, because a lot of the times when you're joining because you just need to have something to find direction in that purpose, it's often a really courageous decision, because it sounds to me like you didn't come from a military background. You didn't have a bunch of people in your family. I was the same way, who joined the military. It was just this crazy thing that I did that my friends couldn't believe that somebody who was impulsive as and rebellious as I was would do. Like, it was just not even expected. Were your friends and family just as surprised?
Oh yeah, 100%. And my mother is a Irish immigrant. She came here to make a better life for herself, and so I'm first generation here. And now I reflect on it, and I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of being the first generation Loughran American citizen, joining the military, so that generations to come, I hope that I leave a legacy of American citizens and people in my family to look back at what I do here and try to aspire to continue to give back to this country that gave us so much.
I love it. I love it. We actually have some people who are joining the show tonight that are actually from New York. We've got Nicole. She is a documentary filmmaker, was on my show last week. And she says, as a New Yorker, I so get it. I live in South New Jersey, and it's pretty fun here too. And then whenever it says LinkedIn user, I don't know who it is. I'm hoping maybe that might be Bill Brown, but I'm not sure. It says, hey there, great to see you both, two teammates. But Bill is the one who introduced us. He's amazing. Great American. Absolutely.
Love you.
And I mean, it is one of those things where I think that you set the example for a lot of the family and the friends around you when you make the decision to join and to serve. And so when you first initially came in, did you have a rating in the Navy, or what did you do?
Yeah, so that's a good. I of course, wanted to be a Navy SEAL, like my friend Bill. I would do anything to walk in those shoes, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for me through the process, and I got thrown into a battalion in the Navy called Navy Cargo Handling Battalion 1, which was actually wonderful, because I think the Navy knew that I was interested in wanting to pursue becoming a Navy SEAL. So they put me in a battalion where I got to do expeditionary training and land navigation and things associated with the skill set that I believe, a lot of Navy SEALs become experts and far beyond that with. So I ended up in that battalion, and I think in my first, they gave me a YN rating, which is for folks that are listening who don't know the Navy well, that's a yeoman, which is like a legal secretary. And so for the rest of my life, people say that I'm the biggest yeoman they've ever seen. I mean, you guys can't see it, but I'm 6'3" and like 240 pounds. So I'm a pretty big boy. And so it's kind of funny, but it gave me a strong foundation for the importance of administrative work and the legal side of what the military does, and many other administrative tasks that were important. So as soon as I touched on to Navy Cargo Handling Battalion, they needed someone in my department to go to Afghanistan, and they obviously picked me out right away. So right away, I think a few months after I got to my first duty station, I was deployed to the Helmand province. And then it was just, a whole whole nother journey from there. Let's just say I was not doing any yeoman work.
That's what I was about to ask. What did you do in Afghanistan? What was your role?
Yeah, it's a great question. We were the first Navy battalion there, which was really great, difficult, but wonderful to also leave the foundation for future battalions and to come and fill our shoes, right? So we were assigned to maybe 4 to 6 different MAs because there were so many rotating out of the area. So we were constantly getting new leadership on the Marine side of things. But our responsibility was really to clean up the logistics of supplies coming into the region. When we touched down, I think the percentage was somewhere around 37 to 38% of supplies landing into the Helmand province of Afghanistan, particularly in Camp Bastion, Camp Leatherneck, were recovered, meaning that 62 to 63% of supplies coming in were lost. Missed.
What? Wow.
Yeah. Stolen, who knows, whatever was occurring. So a lot of Lean Six Sigma work for all you, process improvement nerds out there. We did a great amount of project management to clean up the flight line and to clean up the logistics of FedEx and U.S. products coming in from whatever airlines and making sure that they get to the unit needed, and particularly, we want to get that piece of equipment that helicopter as fast, and efficient as possible, because that one helicopter not functional, it costs us lives, Americans, and loses us this war. So our main priority was to make sure that we're getting those supplies, those critical supplies, and any other such supplies to where they needed to be as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that we can win the war. And we did that. We increased the efficiency rate of the supplies coming into a 99.9 percentile. When we left, we saved the military about $8 billion worth of equipment and money.
Wow. So it sounds like it was a good experience for you, and it was something that was sounds like it was very transformative of an opportunity to do that. Yeah. Was there any? Yeah.
Sorry. Go. I mean, I do want to note that, I'm one of the lucky folks that get tapped to deploy to Afghanistan, but I want to call out all of the service members who did not deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan and tell them that I appreciate their service, and to never discount how you've served in the military. I think in this stage that we're living now, there's so many, you can't really help but compare your military service. And some folks feel like if they didn't deploy in the post 9/11 generation, that their service is somehow lesser than mine or anyone else's. And I just want everybody listening out there who did serve that's not the case, that, you should be proud of what you did regardless of where you deployed to.
Oh gosh, I love that. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, us in the Navy, of course, we're never boots on the ground in Iraq or Afghanistan. We serve in combat zones, and we deploy in harm's way to a certain extent. But everybody makes a difference. It doesn't matter if you're, like you said, the yeoman doing the administrative work, or if you're the people that are cooking the meals. I mean, everybody plays a part, and everybody is an outstanding member of the team. I just had a cook on submarines recently on my show, and it was a fascinating conversation. And that's one of the things that we discussed, is this idea that there are good jobs and then there are not so good jobs. And I reject that wholeheartedly. I mean, every job in the military is important. Every role is vital, or we wouldn't have those ratings, or those jobs wouldn't exist. And it's time that we recognize the services of all the people who are part of that 1%, who agree to stand up and move wherever the military wants to move us, who are put everything else on hold and make the military our number one priority. And I think that that's something that is very important, that you recognize that. So how many years were you in the Navy?
Oh, approximately 4, just under 4.
Yeah. Okay. And then you, after that deployment, did you go on to another duty station, or just that first duty station?
Yeah, well, after that deployment, I deployed to Antarctica, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I'm one of the few the Navy really gave me a hell of a career in 4 years, from the sand to the ice, and it was fantastic. I'm so thankful. I feel so blessed by God that He gave me this wonderful experience, the good and the bad, because we all have quite constructive criticism of the military itself, and we can certainly talk about that. But my experiences were phenomenal, and I'm so blessed to have them. So Operation Deep Freeze was with the Air Force and the Kiwis from New Zealand, and we facilitated the logistics of the equipment going outbound from McMurdo Station in Antarctica, the U.S. military base there, and the equipment coming in to the base. And the reason why that mission was so critical is that it only happens once a year, and it literally is all of the supplies that the folks in that area, scientists and active military and civilians, need to live there for the full year. There's no other, I mean, on occasion, right, they can have little things flown in from New Zealand here and there that they need, but the bulk of the operation and what they're working on there is subject to this very mission annually. So it was a wonderful experience to be a part of it. I think at the time Raytheon had the contract to McMurdo Station, so we learned a little bit about the work that they're doing there, the research they were doing there, and it was wonderful. We saw penguins. I saw a whale in its natural environment, and
how cool.
Yeah, so many great things. And
is that mission still going on?
I would believe so. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked it up recently, but I would think so. I mean, the amount of critical resources that exist in Antarctica and the research being done there, I don't think that we're leaving there anytime soon. I believe during the Obama administration, they invested hundreds of millions of dollars into a new telescope there because it's got the most clear path to see into space because of the degree of pollutants there. Like there's nothing really occurring there. So the skies are beautiful and you can see very far. So putting a telescope there made a lot of sense. So I do understand that there is still a significant amount of research being conducted at McMurdo Station.
So, yeah, I always knew that there were people that got stationed in Antarctica in the Navy. And I remember thinking it was just like one of those crazy like duty stations that only a few people have ever served in. I mean, that my first duty station was Keflavik, Iceland. And so it was sort of the same thing when they mentioned going to Kef. Everybody was like, whoa, where are you going? And I was like, oh, this will be so great. This will be great. Awesome opportunity. So, it's really kind of a neat thing. I mean, I got a chance to go to London my last duty station. And I always take advantage of when I can to get those unique locations because they're the jobs that like nobody else takes. And I just always found that interesting to take a job that was out of the box or a little bit out of the ordinary. So did you know what you wanted to do once you got out of the Navy? Like, did you have a path?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, to any young service member getting out, my advice to you would be to not just jump into anything. Nowadays it's so critical to understand wealth generating skills and how to acquire them. I agree with Teresa. There's no such thing as a bad job in the military. There are, or good jobs, but there are such a thing as wealth generating jobs and maybe not so much wealth generating jobs.
Yes.
That is a reality. And that's a reality in every industry. It's not just the military. It's unfortunately just the world that we live in and what decisions you make as a young adult growing up and figuring out your path. You really cannot predict the future. This year you might read that there's a certain skill set that's going to be worth a lot of money in 5 years, and that could be right, but it also could be wrong. So, understanding where your passion lies is what I would recommend. And so I did not do that. I did not have a strong understanding of who I was. Teresa, I don't know if you feel this way, but when I got out of the military, and even to this day, I think I really struggled in identifying myself as anything but a military veteran.
Yes.
You know, I love the military and I love what I did there, and I love the veteran community. And, you know, there was many times that I really struggled to know who I was. Besides that, you know, I wanted folks to know that I was something besides just a veteran. And I did not do that. And so I leaned in on it, and my path was I was going to pursue becoming a special agent. So I joined the Department of Homeland Security, working in national security with them. It was my first GS job. I was really excited about it. I got my job interview was on 9/11 in New York City for the position. So, I mean, it felt very serendipitous. I was very enthusiastic, and much like many careers, sometimes you anticipate that something is going to be far more complex and I think impressive than what it ends up being. And no shame on the Department of Homeland Security. They have many different programs and many different divisions. And I was at USCIS, but I think I learned pretty quickly in the federal government that there's so much impressive automation and software that maybe some of the work that I expected to do was different than what I thought I was going to do and what I ended up doing. So, you know, I worked in the federal government for a little while. I then ended up working for the State Department in consular affairs. And that was very interesting to get to know the processes in visa and passports and investigating fraudulent activity in that arena. And might I say, there is an abundance of it. We had trainers coming in. This was in 2015, 2016. We had folks come in from the Social Security Administration and tell us about the enormous amount of fraud and waste occurring with Social Security. And now you're hearing significant information about that now in the news. And I will tell you, as a former federal employee who was briefed on Social Security Administration agents who investigated this stuff, it is all real. There was billions of dollars being wasted in fraud because of the abuse of that system from folks. And I'm very happy that we're tackling it. It's a huge issue, and I hope that the administration, you know, continues to make progress. But yeah, I continued to pursue that, and I fell in love with the investigative work in national security, but I did not really enjoy working for the federal government. I must say, it really felt like I was just another screw in a really well-oiled machine, and they could have replaced me with anybody because they have a really strong system in place where their employees are trained really well and they have really great resources, and they will do the job. Now, you know, there's a whole nother dialogue about the passion and commitment to the position and whether they feel the urgency of public service work at a local level. That's a whole nother conversation, but I will confidently say that the management and systems in place are quite impressive. If you really look at it, I mean, there have been so much money invested into ensuring that some of these federal agencies operate as efficiently as they can. And I'll say that some of them out there, at least some that I've been involved in, are really impressive. Not to say that there's still plenty of areas of improvement, but you know, it's a balance, right?
Sure. And I think it's really hard to understand or even wade through the news reports because they're so polarized one way or the other. I mean, everybody has an opinion on it, and everybody can spin what people are trying to do. I always feel like that too. I mean, if you're going to come in and make change and try to fix the government or try to make cuts, you're always going to be seen as controversial, and you're always going to have pushback. And it's hard as a person who's watching it, you know, just from the sidelines. It's hard to even understand like how much of what is being reported is true, or it's just a little piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing. It's not the whole story. And so I just take a lot of that with a grain of salt. But any system, whether it be Veterans Affairs, disability, whether it be Social Security, any quote unquote, I say payment system that is there to help people, is going to be easily or sometimes sadly ripe for abuse. And it is really up to our government to have checks and balances in place to make sure that those systems don't get abused. And
Yeah,
so,
Teresa, one thing I've always said, because as a public servant, which I've been my entire life, I haven't worked in the private sector since I've joined the military. I've spent a good amount of time really thinking about what a public good is and what tax revenue should really be applied towards. It's a very difficult question because we have so many different needs. We have so many different constituency groups that have different challenges and seek out different solutions for those challenges. But one thing I always come to a solid agreement on within myself is that what government really should be phenomenal at is oversight. If nothing else, the oversight of ensuring that we have a fair market that allows for competitive businesses at every industry, nonprofit. I mean, at least in capitalism itself, and oversight on the programs that we're actually delivering on. It really does not seem to me that complicated. That if nothing else, we should be ensuring that folks are playing by the rules, and I think that most Americans would agree with that.
Yep, I think so too. And that's probably the best way to look at a lot of these changes and these cuts is that if these are things that need to be done, so to make sure that things are being run properly, then those are the things that need to happen. I think that sometimes to make news headlines, we find the most extreme examples of some of this waste, fraud, and abuse. And it seems like there's plenty of it. But one of the things that I always find rather interesting is that no one's really questioning the things that are being pointed out. They'll criticize the way in which it's being done, and they'll say that it's being done in a very haphazard way, or it's not being done with a lot of feeling or thoughtfulness. But they're not actually criticizing the things that's being found, and they're not saying it's not true. They're not calling Elon Musk a liar. So that kind of tells me that maybe they are onto something, and that some of the things that they're finding, there's some truth to it. And so I do think that it's good that we're looking into some of these things. And so you said you saw some of the ways in which things could be abused, and you saw that there were checks and balances in place when you worked for things like the consulate office, or you worked in some of these agencies. And then you also worked over on the veterans side. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, before I get into that, I do want to comment on your last remarks, and that, the veteran community, I can't tell you a time where I've ever confidently heard from the community that everyone is very happy with the VA. It's just not existent. And quite frankly, if Mount Sinai or NYU were in charge of offering the entire country of veterans healthcare, there would be great amounts of criticism as well. The VA does a significant uphill battle. But I want to go back to your point in that, with great transitions, whether you're transitioning out of the military, whether you're transitioning for a new job, whether you're transitioning from, your physical fitness, whether you want to work on your physical health or your internal health or your diet, transitions are hard. You're going to try things out that are new, and they're going to be difficult. The first time you lift that weight when you go to the gym, it's going to be heavy, and you're going to go home and you're going to be in pain. But the more that you do it, and the more that you stay consistent on wanting to create that change in your life, those things start to become easier, and you get closer to that destination for which you imagine or you visioned yourself and how you wanted it to see. Even growing this podcast that you've been working on, number 188. I'm sure that this was not what you're doing today was not the same as number 1 or number 18, so the point of this story that I'm telling, or this example that I'm providing, is that consistency is the most important thing in our evolution as people. And in government, that's certainly the case. But when we're going through this transition of maybe calling out some government agencies that historically we've always said, I think they could do better, or I think they should be doing different things, or I wonder where my tax revenue is going. I don't know why, the federal government takes out 40% of my paycheck. Well, now is the time that we're looking at this and saying, let's try some things out. Let's move this around a bit. Let's really courageously try to change and create some real reform in this area. And of course, there's going to be growing pains. Of course, if we're trying something new. And I personally feel like I know that we're onto something new, good, because we have a large sum of people saying, no, 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 look at all the bad this is occurring. Bad, 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 more badness. This is all terrible. And what I interpret from that is that they want to go back to being the same. And it's easy for me to give up going to the gym and accepting the fact that I don't want to get to that point of how I want to look and how I envisioned my future. The same thing where when I went to college or when I got my master's degree, it would be easy for me to give up on that and go back to being just whatever I was doing in that comfortable position. This is the time for us to lean in on the change, lean in on the discomfort that's occurring in the government and in the country, because when we come over this hurdle, we're going to come out better. We're going to come out stronger. And hopefully we're going to come out into the version of the country that we all imagine and describe America to be. And that's why I'm hopeful for what this administration's doing.
Yeah, I am as well. And it's been hard for me not to talk about it as much as I'd like to, because I know it's so polarizing for so many people. And I'm also encouraged by a lot of the things they see. I mean, there's things I see that I don't think were done as well. I mean, I definitely think the DEI purge for the military was something that could have been done with a little more foresight about what public affairs officers can and can't do, which is can't really go through, 20 years of Facebook posts and try to figure out which ones meet a very specific criteria. I think that was a really tough one for a lot of us communication professionals, saying so in my unofficial off-duty capacity, of course. But I definitely think that was, and you know what, they owned that to their credit. They put out a video and said that they might have done that in a way that might have not been as efficient as it could have been. And I definitely respected the fact that they came out and owned some of that as well. And I think that's also really important as they go through some of these changes and some of the growing pains, is that it admit when you make a mistake and then move on and keep trying to do better. I think that's also a really important part of this evolution. And to that, how did you, and actually I'll start from this. When did you start to say, okay, I can get involved in politics? Because as a veteran, and as we talked about earlier, it's really difficult for a lot of veterans to see themselves doing anything in the political space because of the fact that we're so trained not to talk about politics, not to be political. So when did that start for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Teresa. And, you and I had talked about this a few times in our private capacity, and that, when you join the military, it's mission first. And, whoever the commander in chief is, it doesn't matter to us. We're executing, right. And I'm proud of that, and I kind of feel the same way about my public service today. I've served under Mayor de Blasio, working for the Department of Veteran Services. Now I've served under Mayor Eric Adams. And I'm not here today on an official capacity representing that agency. I'm here on my personal capacity discussing, my experiences. But nonetheless, I never let my political views get in the way of me serving veterans in New York City, or in the tri-state area, or across the country, to be honest, because serving in New York City, you get inquiries from everywhere, from folks in Australia, from folks in Europe, folks in California. It doesn't matter. They're either interested in coming to New York City, or they're reaching out to our office because they found us and they just need some help. And it doesn't matter where anybody is. If you're a veteran or a military family member, I'm going to do everything in my power and utilize every resource I have to try to help you navigate whatever issues you're dealing with. And I suppose I got involved in politics because some of what I was privy to in these experiences, I did not think was fair. And I'm not going to get into the details about those things, but I think that many folks could probably come to their own conclusion on what we've seen over the last couple of years, and more, and how important veterans are to this country. And I always hear from elected officials on both sides of the aisle that veterans is a bipartisan issue, and that stands to be true. Where it ends up not being bipartisan is when it actually comes down to something getting passed to support the veteran community and the dollar amount associated with it. And so it might be bipartisan, but cost is never bipartisan.
Yeah. And that's what part is always disappointed me, to be honest with you, Jason. Like, one of my frustrations is as a person who feels deeply about issues like MST, for an example, it's always associated with the Democrats, right? Yeah. If it's an issue about special forces, let's say, I'm just using that, it's always an issue that the right tends to take up. And I hate that. I absolutely hate it, because both sides of the aisle should care about these issues. It should not, and should be just as passionate. But what you do find is that depending on the veteran issue, it will have a certain type of, it'll have a political leaning. And I think as advocates, veteran advocates, I think it's just really important to be as you can be, as bipartisan as possible, because if you have a veteran issue, you want as much support as you can get. I felt the same way when I was working in animal advocacy. People would tend to see animal issues sometimes more towards the left. But what you found is that there's ranchers, there's hunters, there's all these other people that work in the animal related industries that they have to be on board with the things that the animal advocates are doing as well. So you really have to work in a way that isn't about a particular political leaning, but is really sticking to the issues. And to that point, you saw the things when you were, well, I want to back up one thing. There was something in your bio I did want to ask about, but what was this, the resource that you created that led to the 30,000 people who were?
Oh yeah.
Mission VetCheck. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Mission VetCheck was a wonderful program. Some might, it did face scrutiny, and I'll get into that. And so Mission VetCheck was a partnership with a great nonprofit in New York City called New York Cares. And this nonprofit is more well known in New York for holding the annual coat drive, for which they collect coats and then distribute them to the homeless population in New York City. But during COVID, this was a whole new territory that we were in. It's a whole new set of challenges that we were facing, and everybody was all hands on deck, figuring out how to handle this. And social isolation was the one thing that I was concerned about, and my colleagues at the department was concerned about, because we recognize how social isolation could be really harmful to service members' mental health. And in New York City and in New York in general, and I don't know the statistic across the nation, but I'm willing to hypothesize that it's probably similar, in that 70% of New Yorkers who are veterans are ages 55 and older. So many of our veterans in New York City are elderly people, and most of them are also single males. This attributes to our draft generation. And so many of them getting drafted and then returning to New York. They're probably home of residence where they got drafted, and then living in New York for their life now in 2025, or at the time 2020, now, continuing to live on probably a fixed income in New York. So there is a lot of probabilities in the risks associated with them being isolated at home, not being able to go to their VFW, not being able to go to the VA hospital, not being able to, go down to their local, pub or, pool shop or whatever that would help them engage with community, especially if most of our veterans are single males living alone and maybe not with family. So Mission VetCheck was created where we recruited volunteers across New York. We had a software that would protect the PII, specifically the phone number of the service member, and the volunteer would get a populated number for which the software would call They wouldn't have any information about the veteran, their name, male, female, none of that. And their only responsibility was to have a conversation about their day, how they were doing.
I love it.
Yeah. And we obviously did some training. We had the Mayor's Office of Mental Health also create training material that would prepare them for any type of mental health indicators, for which we had a mental health expert on standby during all of the project hours that we called. So that way, if someone did indicate that they needed extra help, or worst case scenario, express suicidal ideation, that we were able to respond to that right away. And this program did not cost taxpayers any money whatsoever, other than just some personnel dedicated to it, like myself and 2 other employees in my office. All the volunteers did it at their own accord. New York Cares gave the software to this project at no cost. And so there was no money associated with this whatsoever. We created it off of nothing. And I think that one of the more challenging thing was actually to get all the data on veterans to make these phone calls, because we really have phone numbers of every veteran across New York. So that was a major hurdle, but one that I think the pandemic really taught us a lesson in government that I hope that anyone listening in government leans in on data sharing agreements, because it really did lead to massive success in our ability to engage with more folks that may have needed the help. And, after it was all said and done, there were some folks that had some constructive criticism because they didn't think it was a mental health program, which it was not. They were correct that whether they wanted it to be a mental health program, that's a different discussion, but it really is not a mental health program. It's a social enrichment program. It was a program to ensure that, Teresa got the chance to talk to a stranger about her life if she chose to. And if she didn't, fine, you just moved on to the next person and made a phone call. But I think the most rewarding component of it was that there was 2 instances of veterans who expressed suicidal ideation, and we got them the help they needed rapidly. And, when it comes to whether tax-paying dollars should be associated with anything and work worth doing, saving 2 lives is well worth it to me. And I'm really proud of that program for it.
I love it. Did the people who were the volunteers, did they just do this from their home? Like, were they able to call the veterans from their home, and they just kind of went down what a rewarding thing to do. You're kind of reminding me of some of the volunteer projects, like working suicide hotlines and things like that. Those are just such powerful programs. And especially in this day and age, I just moved here to Mississippi, and it's tough. It's tough to make friends when you've, you're at this strange place in life where you're now suddenly, like in my case, going to have all this free time in about 5 months. And you're like, whoa, like, what do people do with their time when they're in their, 50s and 60s and 70s? And I'm lucky I have a husband, but some of these people don't, and they don't have anyone.
I got to tell you, Teresa, that was actually a part of the program that I did not expect to have such great outcomes on, and that the feedback we got from the volunteers was much of, I felt powerless during this pandemic. I turned on the news and I saw the medical industry working 24 hours, 7 days a week. They were our soldiers, boots on the ground during this thing, and everybody was just at home. Like,
what do I do?
And so I did not expect this, but so many of them felt such gratitude being able to play a role in making an impact during this very difficult time. And maybe that was also one of the most rewarding components of it, that because it was not expected, and I should have thought about it, but you sometimes you zone in on trying to, make sure you hit the outcomes you want in terms of the mental health component of it, of having positive experiences for these folks who are at home, who you didn't want to be left alone. But hearing that from the volunteers really made it so rewarding.
I bet even today a program like that would really resonate, and maybe there is something out there like that. But I can tell you, like, when I've shared the story before, when I was a little girl and I used to be Grounded all the time in my room. One of the things that I used to do was I used to make cards for people at the nursing home, because in my mind, I was up there, I was all by myself, I was lonely, and I was thinking, oh God, who else is probably lonely? Oh, people who are sitting at a nursing home, and probably maybe don't have, I mean, my mom used to tell me when she served communion there that there's a lot of people at those homes that get no visitors whatsoever. And to just know that the only people that you see every day, day in and day out, is just the paid staff. That's just got to be such for many people, a very lonely existence.
I couldn't agree more. One thing I feel really strongly about, and I think that I'm going to spend more time in my career focusing on it, is elderly care. Elderly care and child care. I think that those two components are something that both parties, but really need to lean in on. We really need to get our money straight when our tax revenue, when we're trying to figure out where our taxpaying dollars should go. It should be to make it easier for young families to bring children into the world, to become families, and B, to take care of those who dedicated their entire lives to our economy and to grow families in America, and to exclude those two cohorts. And not that our government excludes them, but we certainly hear so much about the way that our elderly are treated and maybe forgotten, for lack of better words. And that should not be the case. There should be great programs. It shouldn't cost a family $10,000 a month to put their loved one in a home that is decent, that is close to their home, so that they can spend time with their grandchildren. And it's just a shame that that's the world that we're living in right now.
Yeah. I definitely think that that's definitely an area of understanding and expertise that we need more of. And to take another right turn and transition once again, because I know we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. Tell me a little bit about how you started America's First Vets.
I'm so sorry. I keep trying.
No, but I love everything we're talking about. I mean, my gosh, you've just done so many cool things. And I think you and I have a lot in common when it comes to just advocacy and service. And so it's everything you're saying. I'm kind of like, yep. So, but tell me more about America's First Vets.
Well, I wanted to be more involved in politics. Having been involved in New York City government for so long, I knew I wanted to get involved locally. And as you heard, my first iteration of that was getting involved in the Young Republican Club, because a friend and I, Troy Olson, he also worked to house homeless veterans, Army veteran himself, wonderful man, father. He and I were talking, and we were like, we really feel like the Republican Party is something that we feel closer aligned to right now. And we really should be more involved in them and figure out, what kind of things they're doing in New York. In New York and in some blue states, you're so inundated of one political party that it really takes a sense of curiosity to say, I wonder what other folks are doing,
Sure.
And I think it's easy to also be intimidated in really, really overpopulated political states that lean one way. So whether it's, a state that's always been Republican or a state that's always been Democrat, it does take a sense of courage and bravery to kind of look behind the curtain about, what is this other group that's not really doing that I never really hear about. And so it's good to be curious. And Troy and I, we went to a few New York Young Republican Club events that Gavin Wax, still the current president, oversees. And he's done an amazing job of growing that organization. And kudos to the entire board of that group and all of the members and folks that play leadership roles there, because, it's definitely it's definitely a commitment from so many folks to make it happen. But when we got involved there, we really enjoyed our time. It really felt nice to go to a environment where we spoke freely about our criticism of government, our potential solutions that we believe that need to occur to change the way maybe New York operates, and what priorities New York has, and I think most importantly, without judgment. And
Right.
I think many folks across the country will feel the same thing that I'm describing here, in that there is so much built up tension in dialogues, whether you're talking about your political views, and they may not even be political. These days, it's just kind of an opinion of yours of how you would like to live. It could be very simple, it could be very complex, but there's so much tension around these dialogues now that people don't feel comfortable expressing them. And so the New York Young Republican Club gave us this environment that allowed us to feel accepted and confident in expressing how we feel without judgment, without feeling like we're not going to be allowed back here and things like that.
Right.
And so that was the first iteration of it, and I was really enthusiastic. I'm a very religious person, and I could just feel in my gut and in my heart that God was telling me that this was a place I was supposed to be. It felt like I could continue to grow here as an individual and learn about what kind of person I am and what kind of person I want to be, and learn from others. Take what I think that I should apply to my life, and maybe just learn about things that maybe I don't think I should apply, but understand what both sides of the party feel. Because having worked in government, every day I'm very aware of what the Democrats want to do. Having listened and being a part of New York City, you can't help but know what Mayor de Blasio and now Eric Adams, independent, feel. And so it was really important to me to also just get a sense of balance of understanding everything. And so as that occurred, I got more involved. The Trump administration had a regional administrator for the New York and New Jersey U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Her name is Lynn Patton. And I got a wonderful chance to meet her while I was working on programs to help homeless veterans. And having met her and her senior advisor, Barbara Grusin, I grew to love them as well. They were such kind-hearted people. And I would read the news and read all these terrible things that they were saying about Lynn. And I know this woman, and she's not any of those things. And, my eyes, I think, started to open up. And there were some other experiences that I had that I didn't like. I was a mentor for a group of students for the College of Staten Island. They were participating in a challenge called the IBM Watson Challenge, where they utilized AI to create programs to support public problems. And so I worked on them to develop an algorithm to read create like a temperature reader for social media posts, and determine whether the social media posts was getting to the point where that user who was posting these things online were entering a space of urgency around their mental health and possible suicidal ideation. So we created this great program. It's called Rover.
Interesting.
Where if I opted in as a service member to participate in Rover, I would allow Rover to monitor my social media posts. And I would indicate like Teresa is my emergency contact. And if I ever reached the point where Rover evaluated that my social media posts were indicating some mental health concerns or suicidal ideation, it would send a direct message to Teresa to encourage Teresa to reach out to Jason to see how he's doing, what's going on. And what's really fascinating about it was that every family who had lost someone to suicide could opt into giving the AI the social media posts of that family member. So the AI would constantly get smarter and reading all of these examples of social media posts that may lead to some detrimental experience like that. And so it was wonderful. And then some local news network covered it. And somehow by the end of it, I was labeled as a suicidal veteran that was participating in this, and that this program was built to kind of save me. And, not that that was incorrect. And, because I've had my own challenges, but I think it was the first time I experienced how the media could manipulate a story in a certain way and without someone's consent as well in that,
Right.
right? And I appealed, I forgot the name of the process, but I suggested to them that I don't think that this was accurate and that I didn't have suicidal ideation and that they should redact it. But over Memorial Day weekend, they kept it up the whole weekend and then took it down the following week. And so they still got what they wanted out of it.
Yeah, they played it out for all that it was worth, despite the fact that it wasn't a true story.
Right. So there was these experiences of mine that really led me to want to be more involved in politics. I wanted to get more involved in advocacy and wanting to fight for the folks that, maybe had experiences or maybe had not experienced it, but are part of this system that, in my opinion, we're just driving the country further away from one another and creating more hatred and more victimization. And I really didn't like the way that things were going. So I got more involved in advocacy at a local level, trying to help the New York Young Republican Club, trying to help city council members run for office. And unfortunately, I came across a group that asked me to get involved with them. I won't name them, but after getting involved with their group, I learned that they were charging veterans and myself thousands of dollars to start its own New York or New Jersey chapter to push veterans for America First. And it turns out that they were not genuinely involved in advocacy. They were really taking advantage of folks like me. And so I met a lot of great people from the organization who felt the same as me. And we said, we can just step away from this. Let's do our own thing. And that's when America First Veterans was born. We all got together and we said, let's just do our own thing and do the best that we can. And like yourself and your podcast, the first day really, we keep trying to figure it out. Nothing is perfect. So, you keep trying to put one foot in front of the other in terms of advocacy and supporting elected officials that align with your policy position and what you believe is right for this country. And at least in veterans, for veterans out there, America First Veterans is an organization that we've put together to dedicate advocacy around putting veterans first and to help veterans run for office and to help candidates who are America First, who are going to commit to the policy positions we have for veterans, to help them in office as well. Much of us feel similarly in that the current state of politics is not the most qualified and best candidates that could run for office. And we feel strongly that veterans do make such great candidates and who can fulfill the objectives of the Constitution. And that's what we're working on today. We're very proud of it, and we're happy to have Teresa on board as well.
Yes, I am the Mississippi president. And you have, how many chapter presidents do we have now?
15, I believe. Yeah. Yep. We have a few more coming on board. We're still growing. Like I said, much of this is about consistency. There is a sense of urgency where you want to, you keep looking at how many likes you're getting, how many shares you're getting.
How fast it's growing. But really, at the end of the day, it's just an amazing resource to tap into the expertise of other veterans who are willing to speak up and speak out on the political process. Now, are you guys partisan?
So it's a great question. So as a 501c4, as a nonprofit, we're not affiliated with any political party. We are affiliated with policy positions. And so it doesn't matter what party a candidate is in, if their policy positions align with what our policy positions are, and they can make that pledge to advance those policy positions, we would support them. Now, of course, you can hypothesize that some of our policy positions are more closely related to one political party than the other, but it's not necessarily 100% true. It could be any candidate.
And Jason, that's what I was really drawn to, is that, yes, it did seem, of course, maybe a little more right of center, but at the same time, I definitely knew when I was joining that this was not a partisan organization. Like I definitely had that sense that this was about the policies that AFV stood for and showcasing the critical need to put qualified and motivated and competent veterans within the political process, whether that be running for office, whether that be helping with a campaign. And I was just, and truly, I mean, Jason, the first time I talked to you, the few times that we went back and forth, I went on the website, I looked at what you did, and I said, I want to be a part of this. This is a good organization that is doing things the right way. And I mean, that was.
Yeah, like you said, Teresa, the fact that we get to bring so many great people together and help them advance their own personal objectives and goals and connect them with one another as a community, we are so much stronger. So I really encourage any veteran or veteran families out there who are interested in being a part of our community to please reach out to us, visit our website, fill out our contact form, sign up as a member, whatever you wish. Hit me up on LinkedIn, on Instagram. It doesn't matter. We are any access point to us. We would love to have you as friends, first and foremost. And after that, hopefully we can change the country together. I do want to note that in our advocacy work, it is policy related, but also we advocate for folks that are veteran employees. We had a group that reached out to us who are recreational therapists at the VA. And they were really concerned about losing their job or that the VA would downsize recreational therapy at these VA medical centers across the country. So we wrote Secretary Collins a letter advocating for him to ensure that no cuts occur for recreational therapy. And we laid out all of the really important reasons why recreational therapy is critical to our elderly veterans in these senior homes that are federally run and even in our medical centers across the country. So it's really not just, legislation. It's also just what is the right thing to do and how can we play a small role in helping these folks get their message across to some of the people that are in charge of these critical agencies across the administration.
Now, can you see the website? I think I just shared screen. So this is the website right here for America's First Veterans. I'm showing this for those of you joining us by audio. You can't see it. So if you want to go to it, you go to americafirstVets.org. And you can read a little bit more about it. You can meet the team here. We've got some of the presidents here. Adam's on there. Stephanie's on there. You're on there, Jason. A bunch of us are on there. Katie, I think, is one of the newer Minority Warfighters National Advisor. You just announced that recently. There's me. So it's just an amazing organization. And like I said, Jason, I was sold as after I did my research. I looked at some of your materials. I mean, you've really put together this fantastic organization that I just encourage people to take a look at because I think that you guys are really onto something. And I think this organization, in my view, is just going to continue to grow and to continue to get bigger and get more traction. That's where I see this going.
Thank you, Teresa. I mean, my vision and my hope for it is that it belongs to all of us and that it continues to bring great people together. And that's really all that matters to me. But anything else that anyone can do to help us, it's certainly welcomed.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, what's next for you? Tell me a little bit about what are you working on now? What are some of the things that you want to see for the future?
Yeah, well, for America First Vets, we certainly want to see more chapter presidents and more chapters grow. I'm speaking to several donors to see if we can get some capital to help these state presidents to start their own fundraising events at the state level and to give them the freedom to do what they need to do at that state level to operate. Even though we are a national organization, we are decentralized. So as a national president or chairman, my goal is to give as many resources as possible to give to folks like you, Teresa, for you to independently run your chapter how you wish in the state of Mississippi and elsewhere. So that's what we're focused on now. Teresa knows this, and I'm okay with saying this, that I have been talking to the administration and possibly interviewing for positions there. I had a great conversation with Secretary Turner, and I pray that things work out. But even if it doesn't, I've just been so thrilled to have the opportunity to work and discuss the different objectives of this administration. And I'm certain that there's going to be more opportunities for me and everybody in our organization to continue to advance their own professional goals to help veterans across the country and other advocacy efforts like that they're interested in, such as yourself, Teresa, in animal rights, and Adam with energy, and Azad with small business administration. We all have such unique skill sets, and what brings me a lot of joy is finding ways to lift others up and to lift people like you up, Teresa, and to lift my friends and family up so that we can all, live great lives that we're proud of. And, I think we're going to get there. I have faith that we are. And I pray to God that he's given us the opportunities to walk through those doors. And I know we will. Together, united, we're going to make a big difference.
I love it. I love it. Community is so important. So important. Well, I'm excited. Like I say, just got a few more months till I hit that big retirement goal of September 1st and to hopefully get a lot more involved than I am now. But I really enjoy just right now, just having the back and forth and the chat on the group. It's been actually a really amazing experience. I mean, I'm already in talks to go on Adam's show, or Adam come on my show, and the same thing with Aaron Love. So it's just amazing. Plus, I just love Stephanie. She's just great. I think I saw that she just went to the White House and did a women's event there. So that was really neat. So it's also, like I said, it's opened up a door of connection with all these people that I would have just never met and known anything about. So thank you so much for the opportunity. But as we wrap up the call, if people want to know more information, where to find you, like I say, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Instagram, you're also on Facebook. I mean, you're not hard to find. America's First Vets is not hard to find. So I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to interview you and to come on the Stories of Service podcast.
Oh, likewise, Teresa. Hoorah.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to go full screen, but I'll meet you backstage just to say goodbye. But thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. 2 shows this week. So don't always do that, but it's always a wonderful opportunity when I have the chance to talk to amazing people. And sometimes that's got to be done in 2 shows, not just 1. But hope you all enjoyed the broadcast tonight. I know I did. As I always close out these calls, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and enjoy the rest of your evening.